So this is Matthew chapter 9, the scripture for the 5th of August. Some Christians make the mistake of assuming that one of the goals of the Christian life is to avoid conflict. Unfortunately, being in the situation of having a world under the reign of sin, standing for Jesus on the one hand and avoiding conflict on the other aren't missions that always coexist well. Now, Jesus doesn't go out of his way to incite division, and in the same way we're commanded by Paul in Romans, which we'll get to soon, to, in as much as we can do so, live at peace with everyone. But Jesus also doesn't allow fear of conflict to keep him from acting in accordance with his mission. We see this in his first 3 interactions in chapter 9. So first, he extends forgiveness and then healing to this paralytic. This ordering gets a rise out of the scribes and religious leaders, and Jesus could have, by and large, avoided a conflict by simply tending to the protagonist's physical needs and simply healing him and, not worrying about forgiveness of sins. Next, he invites a tax collector, Matthew, called Levi in other Gospels, to be his disciple, and then he eats with some of Matthew's friends, unsavory people, tax collectors, sinners, etc. Jesus could have simply taken Matthew on as his token tax collector, if you will, without associating with these sorts of people. Finally, Jesus draws some distinctions between John's ministry and his own. He could have assimilated to John's practices and avoided fighting on 2 fronts, both against John's disciples and against the Pharisees. But to compromise in any of these situations, Jesus would need to water down his message of spiritual healing for anyone and everyone. Jesus does not compromise his mission. What Paul commands us in Romans 14 is, as much as it is in your ability to do so, live at peace with everyone. Excuse me, I said Romans 14. That's Romans 12, I believe. And that's what Jesus does here. When it's not within his ability to compromise, he doesn't. Because to compromise when it's not within your ability to do so is to take on more than you can chew. It just doesn't work. By allowing for conflict, Jesus clarifies his mission with the people. And the human tendency is to be jealous of someone with very clear boundaries and a very clear mission, because that's what we want in our own lives. From here, Jesus then demonstrates the power that God's given him. He brings a girl back to life after healing an unclean woman. You see, bleeding made a woman unclean ritualistically, according to the Levitical law code. Much in the same way that he cleansed the leper in the last chapter, Jesus extends healing to somebody who was considered unclean and who couldn't touch anyone else, because if she touched anyone else, they would be made unclean. And Jesus extends this without even knowing that he's extending it. He just feels power going out from him, which I think is wild. Jesus' purity is such that it's contagious in some profound way. And while Jesus wishes to avoid news leaking out, possibly so that the crowds don't simply see him as a neat party trick, word spreads. The Pharisees begin to attack the healings. Note that they're not skeptical of the healings. They can't disprove that they happened. Instead, they attack the way that Jesus healed. They said, by the prince of demons, he casts out demons. He said that Jesus uses evil outside help to do these deeds of power. But Jesus continues to teach and care for the crowds, matching his words and his deeds to show those who listen what God looks like. Jesus doesn't get into it with the Pharisees around this. He doesn't disprove them. He just continues to teach. Now I wonder, how do you discern when to take a stand and also when to avoid conflict? That's all for Matthew chapter 9. Tomorrow, the 6th of August, we'll look at Matthew chapter 10. May God bless you in your reading of Scripture.